Welcome back to From the Burbs to the Tetons. This is our third video in a series talking about buying property with an emphasis on land. Now this video we're going to talk about CCRs and homeowner associations, HOAs. CCR stands for Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions. These are kind of the rules and regulations that you agree to live by when you buy into a neighborhood or a housing development that has a homeowners association with CCRs. And the idea is that these CCRs are to protect the homeowners from kind of a rogue neighbor who decides to, do just things that are stupid and not fair to the rest of the people who live there. So the idea is to protect your property value and the quality of life you're expecting from that neighborhood when you bought into it. I have a lot of real estate agents in my family, so when we have family dinners, we often talk about real estate stuff. And one of the things that I remember coming up often is how homeowners would often blame the homeowners association or the CCRs for not being able to do something. And it's funny how often their complaints are really building code for the county or the state. So they could blame the HOA or go after the HOA as much as they want to. It's not even their purview to regulate that or change it or give an exemption. Let me give you a few things that I'm running into in Teton County. And by the way, I'm not in a housing development, so I don't have any CCRs. Some interesting ones. You can only build your house to 30 feet high, which doesn't sound like a big deal until you consider often you're talking about 12.10, 12.9 pitches versus maybe 12.6 that you get in the South or mid-America. I'm up north, so the higher pitches are to help have the snow fall off your roof. That affects the complete height of your building. What if you want 10-foot ceilings? It very quickly can get over 30 feet with a high pitch and ceilings. Tiny homes. They don't allow true tiny homes in the county. It has to be at least 600 feet. That's still pretty small. I see these tiny homes that are often 300, 400 square feet. So it's a tiny home, extra large, I guess you could build. You can't live in an RV on your property. You can get a permit to temporarily live in it for up to 18 months, but after 18 months, you need to move out and move the RV. You can only build two homes on your property. I have 20 acres. I could easily fit 4 or 5 or 6. And the two homes, they consider one a guest and one a main. The guest house can be no more than 1,500 square feet. And that's livable space. And then whatever you build your guest house at, let's say you did 1,200 feet in your guest house, then your main house would have to have at least 2,400 square feet of livable space. And what I mean by livable space, they don't consider the garage a livable space. So those are all county level regulations and have nothing to do with what's in the CCRs. So CCRs often have good things in them and things that I consider bad. It's like, why did they put that in there? That's just silly. But one thing is that if you decide to buy that property, you're going to be bound by all of those rules. You can get waivers sometimes. You have to apply for them. They can take a long time, but I wouldn't count on getting the waiver. They also, if you do something that's against the homeowner's rules, they can often fine you and also take matters into their own hand and, just bid it out to anybody, not caring about the price and, making it happen. I know in our area, the big two things are renters will often not do a good job maintaining the lawn. And I think in our homeowners association, it says that the grass can't be more than 12 inches high. I think that's way too high. They should have made it like 6 or 8 inches, but it's 12. Things like that. And then also the original company that poured a lot of the cement in the area didn't tap down the mud and everything, so it's separating from the houses and you've got gaps all over. Anybody who has steps, it just looks horrible. And that's a problem I'm going to have to deal with a second time. I already tried to get it fixed once and now I'll have to fix it again. So there's different areas that the CCR is likely to cover. One of them is going to be services. That's going to be things like general liability insurance for common areas, upkeep of the common areas, upkeep of the roads in the neighborhood, because often roads in neighborhoods are not county roads. Update of any, utilities. Do you have street lights, sidewalks, garbage collection, recycling? So those kind of things. A lawn mowing service to mow the lawns in the common space. Now, depending on how rural you are, there may not be any common areas or common space, but there could be. We have a couple of playgrounds that need upkeep and insurance in our development here. So that's one area. Another area is going to be behavioral rules and regs. Parking. You've got to park your cars in your garage, or you can only have one car parked outside. You can't have a business vehicle parked in the neighborhood. You can't park out on the street. Restriction on storing recreational vehicles, RV, boats, snowmobiles, ATVs. You may not be able to park them on your property, or you'll have to park them in your garage. Some just request that you park it where it's kind of hidden like a barrier. So you may have a place where you park it and you plant trees around it so it's not so obvious. Pet restrictions. You can only have 2 pets or a certain size pet. Property upkeep, mowing your lawn. Some have restrictions on rentals, so you can, may not be able to rent at all, or you can only do 1-year rentals and not short-term rentals, like a, Airbnb. Running a business from your home. They can go all the way from no business at all. This YouTube channel, if I monetize it, it could be considered business, and I wouldn't be able to run it, all the way up to a point where it's like, well, you can run a business as long as you don't have any customers showing up at your home. Those kind of things. So that's another important part of the CCR to review and see how it's going to affect you, short-term and long-term. And then there's going to be the architectural rules, which are going to cover everything from landscaping, fences, style of your home, colors, materials, what kind of deck you can put up. Just about anything that takes either a shovel or a circular saw, a hammer or a nail is going to be covered by the homeowner association architectural rules. Now, some of these rules can be fantastic, really help the value of your home. For instance, if you're a planned community, often they'll have a color that's been picked out for your house. Sometimes they let you choose the color between 2 or 3, and then what they do is each owner, as they buy, they make sure the house next to it, the colors don't clash real bad. But then imagine if people could just start coloring, painting their house any color they wanted to. Boy, you get some really ugly color combinations right next to each other. So that makes a lot of sense to keep the neighborhood looking nice. How big your home is. It doesn't make any sense to let somebody build a 1,000 square foot home in a neighborhood where everybody else is building 2,500 square foot homes. Another one that I saw in a CCR that I thought was really good, where it was more of an upscale neighborhood, they said your house had to have at least 6 corners. So that prevents you from just doing a generic farmhouse with 4 corners. Requires you to design and build something that's got a little, style to it. Now, for all the good ones that I see, I probably see 4 or 5 bad ones that I just shake my head. Why are you doing that? That doesn't make any sense, especially around outside design. I can understand limiting certain styles in a area like Teton County, where it's in the mountains. You expect kind of a mountainy looking house. I mean, a colonial would look completely out of place being built there. But I think it would make more sense to limit the styles than to say, oh, you can only do these 2 styles. For instance, modern. I've seen some houses built by logging companies, either timber frame or a log home, that has a modern style to it that look great, and they would be fine in Teton County. It would not look out of place. Materials. this one just boggles my mind, where they have a very specific list of materials that you can use to build your home. So when I was looking at the CCRs, I started noticing a pattern. It's almost like, okay, the same person owned these lands, or the same person was used to write these CCRs, a contractor to write these CCRs, because at least the architectural area, 95% of the words were the same. I mean, identical word for word. And it seemed like every once in a while they learned a little bit more and made a tweak, but it was so poorly written to begin with, they'd have to write 40 or 50 of these things before they actually got it to be good. So I started asking for the CCRs right up front because I saw this pattern. Most properties, you probably wouldn't do that. It would be one of the last things you look at, because you're not looking for something that's just completely outrageous. Realize that most people, when they buy property up there, they're not buying it so that they can like build their rental property. A lot of people, whatever they build up there, they actually are building it for their retirement home or their forever home. It's amazing to see how many vacation homes are being put on the market. You can tell they're a vacation home. The furniture you can get the furniture to go with it, those kind of things. So let's go over a couple of things, and I'll explain why I thought they were just, bizarre. So one of the first thing is that your house has to be made of all natural products. I understand what they're going for, lots of woods and things like that, but some of them literally come out and just say, well, it can't be a wood composite mixture. So let me give you a for instance. There's a company that specializes, I think there might be two companies out, but there's a couple of companies that specialize in making cement logs. They look like real logs, but they're made out of cement, and they build them just like a regular log cabin, except they're cement. You can't tell the difference unless somebody told you they were cement, or you had to walk up with a hammer and hit on it and didn't hear the thud, thud, thud of a log. You wouldn't know the difference. Why would they care that you used cement logs instead of wood logs? Composite siding, they don't allow that. And when I was reading this, it was funny because I think I'd just seen a show. It might have been Fixer Upper, but I've seen a couple of them where what they did is the hip wall part of your main wall, the first 3 feet or so. Often when you're in a snow area, you're going to put stone there, or brick or something, and then wood above it. And I've seen in a couple of places where the designer went ahead and took metal roofing and put it there, corrugated metal roofing. It really looked good. As a matter of fact, in one place I saw where they got unprotected corrugated roofing on purpose so that it would rust a little bit and get a little patina, and then they would seal it after that. And they had mentioned to the homeowners, like, look, we'll leave you some seal, let it go for about 6 months, and then seal it, and it'll look really well. And then even without the patina, it looked fantastic because of the color structures that went together and everything. Red Poppy Ranch, doing a very similar thing. He's got 50-year-old corrugated roof that he's putting on the bottom 3 or 3.5 feet of his house. And it looks fantastic. It's beat up a bit, and it really gives this house a lot of character. I really like it. Okay, let's say shingles. A couple of them said that you have to have asphalt shingles. Now, asphalt shingles are the worst shingles that you can put on a house. Metal is much better. Ceramics are much better. And they're even starting to produce solar shingles. You wouldn't be able to put those on your roof. Again, doesn't make any sense to me. Natural colors. Well, what is a natural color? Here's a picture of this color scheme I plan on using, and this would not work. I would have to get a special approval for this. And these are colors that are used all the time on log cabin homes and timber frames. But yet, who knows if they're really going to approve them? You're not allowed to have any outbuildings, which is just bizarre, especially in a rural area that you can't have a shed. A shed is an outbuilding. So if you wanted to have a 12 by 10 shed, you could not do that. You want to make a woodworking shop, 20 by 20, can't do that. short-term rentals. That doesn't make any sense to me either. I know why they did it, because there was an article in the newspaper that talked about why they're worried about noise from renters or unruly renters. Just put an unruly clause in the CCRs and don't make it about renters. I know homeowners that can be unruly. I know one-year renters that can be unruly. So some of these things, I just scratch my head. HOA picks your building site. Now this one I can understand for when they're little lots and they're squeezed together and everything, especially if you're someplace where there's something to look at, because the last thing you want to do is, let's say you've got a hill where there's 5 or 6 lots and you build the third lot and you've got this great view of the lake and you're loving it, and 3 years later somebody buys the lot right in front of you and builds their house right in front of your house, and now you no longer can see the lake. It's not like you can go, oh, I'm just going to move my house over to the right or the left. Now on bigger lots, 5, 10 acre lots, I don't think it makes that much sense to do that. And here's a bizarre one that I ran into. Not only did the HOA get to help you pick your build site, but once you picked your build site, you could not use the rest of the land because there was an easement for it to be farmed. And to me, that's just bizarre. You didn't get any lease money. The homeowners association doesn't get any money. The farmer gets to basically use this land free of charge while you're paying taxes on it. The only positive is that you only have to pay the agricultural rate on that. Just to give you an idea, I have 20 acres. I'm having somebody else farm it at the moment while I'm getting all my ducks in a row to do the build, and I'm only paying about $90 a year land tax on it. There's some weird stuff out there. I think one of the things you want to go into looking at the CCRs when you're reviewing them is where there's a lot of minimum and maximums in it. Those are good things. It has to be a minimum of 2,000 square feet living area. It has to be, X amount for the kitchen and X amount for this, and it's got to be a special door, and it's got to be a certain color, and so on and so forth. Yeah, if it's a planned community, the color stuff makes sense, but if it's not a planned community, I really like it where they point you in a general direction and then kind of like give us your best shot of what you think you can design and make it look cool and what the designers can do, and then we'll approve it on a case-by-case basis. I think that works a lot better, and it leaves a lot of leeway of, as long as your house doesn't look like it was designed by a young kid with crayons, you're probably going to get approved. So I'm wondering if you've run into any really bizarre architectural rules and regs that you want to share. And as I think of some, I'll add them down in the comments, because there's too many for me to go over in the video, and I'm just not remembering them all right now. But go ahead and comment down below some of the things you've run into. Try and stay away from the HOA from hell stories. And concentrate on just weird CCRs that you've seen. They give you a perfect example. The CCRs we have here right now require you to build any outdoor shed in a very specific area, with the idea of making it so it wouldn't be in the way of your neighbors being able to have a nice view. My neighbor built a shed that was like 4 feet by 3 feet above the fence, and I asked him to come over and take a look at it. I says, well, if you put up a nice picture, I don't have a problem, but I don't want to look at the backside of your shed all this time. Well, the funny thing is that I put my shed up against my house, and it's definitely higher than it's supposed to be by the CCRs. I had to get a special exemption for it. But what they really needed to do is, instead of being so specific about where to put it, instead, what was the real thing they were trying to do is that your shed cannot be obstruct your neighbor's view of the neighborhood. That's what they should have put in, and then let me try and figure out how I wanted to build my shed to make that happen, instead of giving me specific instructions on what to do, thinking that that would solve the problem. So let's continue the conversation on CCRs in the comment section below. Let's go ahead and move on to real estate agents. Now, one of the things that I think is very important is that you need to be very upfront with your real estate agent about anything you're doing, as far as switching real estate agents or interviewing real estate agents, because as part of a lot of the state real estate agent code, there are severe penalties for trying to steal somebody from another agent, messing with an agent's contract to sell a house. So just be really upfront to protect them. It's the right thing to do. So I ended up interviewing 3 real estate agents. The way I found them is I looked at reviews on Zillow, on Realtor. There's even an independent site now that does reviews on local real estate agents. And that's a good place to start. One, basically, I chose from a really good firm, as well as he was the listing agent on one of the properties I was interested in. I ended up not going with this gentleman. Really nice guy, very knowledgeable, but it was kind of clear to me that he was doing this more part-time. I'm sure at one time he was, doing it full-time as much as he could. My mom, who's in the real estate agent, basically did the same thing at one point, where she only serviced her current clients. So when they were ready to, roll over their house and buy a new property, she would work with them, or if they were moving out of the area, or recommendations. But she wasn't trying to pick up, new clients in the real estate office or through doing open houses. And so I ended up not picking him. I interviewed on 2 more realtors. One of them, the real estate agent, seemed to be a little bit more attuned to people who were building, understood, the things you had to go through in the valley to go ahead and build. The other one seemed a little bit more attuned to already pre-built property. Because we were kind of predisposed to wanting to build, I picked the realtor that to me felt like he had a little bit more on the ball around people who wanted to buy land and build. After working with him for 6 months, we just didn't mesh, and the other realtor I really liked a lot, personally, on a personal level. I really felt comfortable with her. And the realtor I was using, it seemed like every single property was priced perfect, which didn't make sense to me, because some of this property had been on the market for 5 years. I know it's a slow market because it's rural and everything, but come on, 5 years? That's a long time for property to be on the market. And you'll see that in one of my other videos where I talked about how you can go look up stuff and see it come on and off the market several times. And maybe he didn't realize I knew that I'd been looking at land for that long in the valley. So I ended up switching over to KARIN WERTHEIM. KARIN was just great. When we went through the neighborhoods, without me asking a lot of questions, she would just say, here's a nice house, this is what I think about it. It's probably priced, about $10,000 over where it should be. Things like that. She'd also immediately go, well, this is something that I'm listing, this is what it's listed for. If she's listing it, she's got to be careful about how much she says about something, because she's really representing, the seller when she's the listing agent. But again, she was very honest with stuff, and I made it clear to her the biggest thing I was counting on her to do was to make sure I didn't do something stupid, because I didn't think to ask her a question. I asked her to be very proactive about, did you think of this? Did you think of that? As an example, I was interested in some property in one of the housing developments. Now, the fire department has to approve any build permits. They've got to make sure that there's enough water on hand to put out any fires. And when you're in a neighborhood in Teton Valley, the neighborhood has to have a neighborhood water source. Well, this neighborhood had decided to use a pump system. A lot of them use fire lakes or, an underground tank. But this neighborhood decided to use pumps, and the pumps were no longer able to pump the quantity of water that the fire department needed. So basically, the homeowners association, before anybody else could build, would have to go ahead and spend the money to get the pumping system fixed. And I think the problem is that the water table sometimes drops and there's not enough water. So they should have dug the wells another 50 feet deep. So I mean, that, you know, those kind of things of being honest, of, hey, don't let me do something stupid. She was really great at. She was very knowledgeable, very personable, great to work with. And she made sure I didn't do something stupid, the number one thing I asked her to do. I'll go ahead and put her information below, because, you know, if you decide, hey, you know, that thing that Tom found is great, I think we want to follow him and you know, retire in Teton Valley, Idaho, she'd be a great person to help you find a house, find some land, and get yourself set up. So I hope this video series has helped you get started on your way to buying some land and feeling confident that you know a lot more about the do's and don'ts, and just not doing something stupid that, you know, later you go, holy smokes, I wish somebody would have told me that, because I just made a $10,000 or $15,000 mistake, or I shouldn't have bought the land at all and now I've got to try and get rid of it. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. I hope you'll subscribe to the channel, and if you want to know when we're uploading our next video, go ahead and click the bell button.